Joe Rogan, move over. Theo Vaughn, beat it. Tucker Carlson, get the hell out of here. We're back with another episode of Fighting Matters. I'm Stephen Kesting, grapplearts.com, Perseverance, Life and Death in the Subarctic, the book that I just wrote. Jesse, who are you?
Who am I? I wake up every morning asking myself that question. I'm Jesse Walker. I run Rough Hands BJJ here in Louisville, Kentucky. I haven't written a book yet. Maybe one day I'll get around to it. So for now, we'll have to just settle with the jiu-jitsu.
Jeffrey Shaw.
I'm Jeff Shaw. I own Bellingham BJJ. I am a part of the part that once was all. And I'm currently writing a book about Theodore Roosevelt's role in the martial arts in America.
Damn it, I really do have to write a book.
Steve, who are you?
Hey, I'm Stephen Kepfer, head coach of New York Combat Sambo in New York City. I have written lots of articles and some book chapters, but not a full book, so sorry.
And you are also heavily involved in stunt work. And I just found out that you once hung out with Donald Trump. So do tell.
Well, yeah, this was at the Affliction Band press conference in New York City. It was the Fedor Josh Barnett fight that never happened, right? So I have the T-shirt, the limited edition T-shirt of the fight that never happened. But yeah, I met Trump for a brief moment there. I mean, it just goes to say his role and his sort of fingers have been in the MMA pots for a long time. I mean, ever since he let the UFC fight in Atlantic City on his property. But he's been around, hovering in that world, you know. So I did get a chance to meet him one time. And funny story, Art Davey, one of the founders of the UFC, was Trump's roommate in military school. So there's a little known fact for you.
Really?
Yeah.
This is probably going to be clipped and taken out of context. So you're a known Trump associate. And
oh, boy.
because of your Sambo background, you're clearly a Russian agent as well.
Yes.
So
yeah.
How much, obviously, a lot of this podcast has been talking about the alt-right and the rise of fascism and how that interacts in the combat sports space, but we've not explored Sambo at all. Obviously, Sambo, Russian grappling art, elements of judo and Russian folk wrestling.
Yeah.
How has this uptick in fascism and alt-right and conspiracy theory fared in that community?
Well, it definitely is. There's a presence there, like everything else. I would say we're a much smaller community, so it's not as apparent, right? I think it's probably easier to hide if that's what your goal is. But I was listening to your episode on active clubs, active gyms, and I guess for those who haven't heard that episode about, you know, where gyms, BJJ gyms are sort of being used for recruitment and propagandizing white nationalist, neo-Nazi type stuff. And it made me remember a moment I had it was when I was still running the American Sambo Association. It was probably about 15 years ago. It was like maybe 2006, maybe 20 years ago, close to. And, you know, as we all do, we own businesses. I'm Googling American Sambo Association, see who's saying what about it, and I found a chat board, because this is the chat room days. I found a white nationalist chat room that was listing the American Sambo Association as a place to go to find gyms that train white martial arts, right? So it was, it was crazy. So, of course, my wife walks into the office, and I'm on the computer, like, she's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm creating an account. I'm going to log on to this site and tear someone a new asshole. And they're like, she's like, no, please don't do that. You don't need to do that, right? So she talked me out of it, but that was sort of the first time I had any kind of inkling that world even existed in the Sambo world, you know? And, so I don't know if you guys are aware, but Russian disinformation, and Russia using martial arts clubs, specifically Systema clubs, to basically create active clubs in other countries like Slovakia, Hungary, Germany. They'll basically set up a Systema club, send in a GRU or some retired Spetsnaz guy as the coach, and that's where they'll recruit pro Putin, white nationalist leaning like people, you know. And kind of similar to what you guys talked about with the jiu-jitsu clubs, it's super decentralized, and they're often named with the name wolves in them because of the. I don't know if you guys are aware of the Russian biker gang. They started early in the 80s, called Night Wolves, and they originally started as like getting illegal movies and stuff into the Soviet Union, like having these underground VHS clubs and all this kind of stuff. And they've grown, and now they have chapters. They have thousands of members and chapters all over Europe, and but it originated there, and they actually are funded by the Kremlin, by Putin, and they were a big part of sort of setting the stage for the original incursion into Ukraine in 2014. So they were like a lot of those unidentified folks that were there, sort of doing legwork in prep for the invasion, were these guys, and they ended up getting a lot of money from Putin subsequent to that. So that kind of approach to using sport for imperialism and propagandizing is not unfamiliar to Soviet Union and now Russia and stuff like that. So have you guys heard of the Black Fist self-defense program? This is pretty amazing. In 2016, there was a group, a company, it turns out to be a Russian company, but they didn't present themselves that way, called the IRA, ironically. The Internet, I forget what it stands for. But anyway, what they were doing was they were the big bot farm that were creating all the fake Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts and all that kind of stuff leading up to, during the election leading up to 2016. And so what they were doing was actively contacting African-American-owned MMA gyms under the guise of, we want to just support what you guys are doing and this and that. And they were literally paying them monthly fees to just teach their normal classes under the guise of this new Black Fist self-defense program, and just send us pictures of you guys training. And people were making hundreds of bucks a month to do this, right? And what struggling gym owner wouldn't want free money to do, getting paid to do what I'm already doing? And all you had to do was send pictures of you guys training. So what was happening is the IRA was creating fake Facebook African-American extremist Facebook groups, and they also controlled fake white nationalist extremist groups, and they were starting fake wars online between these two groups using the pictures taken by all these African-American MMA gym owners in the States, New York, LA, Florida, all these different states. Yeah. And trying to stoke the racial tensions in this country leading up to the election.
That's amazing, because that's a playbook that we first heard about leading up to the election, that I first heard about. I believe it was two Facebook groups. One was Texans Against Sharia Law, right? Like, what good Texan would want Sharia law there? And then they had thousands and thousands of members. And then there was another Facebook group, Facebook organized group. I think it was called the Preservation for Islamic Knowledge. So who wouldn't want to preserve Islamic knowledge? And then they were trying to organize demonstrations to preserve Islamic knowledge, to prevent Sharia law coming to Texas, as if that's a big danger, at the same place, at the same time. And both groups got tracked back to a bot farm in St. Petersburg, sucking in real people, essentially trying to create a massive riot between God-fearing, Muslim-hating Texans and actual Muslims. And it's just this idea that there's no right or wrong. They're not really trying to promote one side or the other. They're just trying to sow chaos and division.
Just chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this tactic, it's the Internet Research Agency, IRA. That's what it is. But this tactic of using I mean, it's evolved obviously to modern times, right, with electronic communication, but the in the Cold War era, it was called active measures. Ironically, the use of the word active in the Soviet Union, that was their propaganda program to paint foreign countries, in a certain light. In fact, if you look it up, you'll find that they were stoking the media at the time in the 80s that AIDS was created by the United States.
And especially in sub-Saharan Africa.
Exactly. They were putting out all this fake news media that it was us, And the same thing, I think they pushed like the organ donor, like there was a organ donor black market trade in the United States, focusing mainly on children and stuff like that. So this is not a new playbook, like you said. It's an old playbook. So to your original question, though, me as a gym owner, and a Sambo guy living in that world, you just kind of have to acknowledge that it's there, and try and curate your community as best you can to prevent stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but in 2013, at the time, it was the American Amateur Sambo Federation. They were the official governing body in the United States for FIAS, right, for the International Sambo Federation. And they got caught. They basically went under because there was a big FBI organized crime bust, and they found out a bunch of the board members of the AASF were part laundering money for Russian organized crime through Sambo back to Ukraine and Russia. Oopsie daisy, right? So they would basically get money. They would get money from whatever criminal organization was laundering, even back from Russia, these Russian crime organizations would give all this cash to the ASF and, hey, send it back to us in fiat as proceeds from tournaments and things that never happened, right? But that's how they would do it. They would do this cyclical thing. So they basically got shut down after that, But it's definitely a thing in this world that you have to watch out for.
It's funny that you mentioned Systema, because Systema is kind of this internet joke, at least within the jiu-jitsu community, because the stupidest stuff that you see, almost bar none, some incredibly out of shape fat guy deflecting a knife sideways with his belly and then like making people jump across the room by blowing on them or tapping them on the forehead. It's
gone beyond that. It's gone like there's videos of Rapco, like, the whole snake oil charlatan show of, you got a whole bunch of people behind a curtain and he's moving them with his using of the force or whatever. It's like, I mean, when I first learned about Systema, it wasn't like that far down that crazy rabbit hole. It was just sort of this weird, flowy Aikido-like version of a and it just went crazy,
So do you think, with the fact that so many of them were used as active clubs, or recruitment tools, I wonder if that drove it towards being more nonsensical, in the sense that if we can get them to believe that this nonsense works, we can also probably get them to believe all this propaganda about Russia. I'm wondering if those two things are linked at all.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. I mean, I don't know. I never really trained Systema or anything. I never even functioned in that world, but it makes sense. It's like the hackers on Facebook when they do these stupid chain posts and say, hey, answer this and post it and tag 10 of your friends and like whatever. And those are hackers trying to see who's dumb enough to fall for that shit. You know what I mean? And so I'm sure there's some level of like, if they believe this, they'll believe anything, or at least they're impressionable, I mean, and that's the big thing, right? It's like impressionable, lonely people that don't feel like they have a community go in there, and then all of a sudden they have a community, and then the being a member of the community becomes more important than what the community actually stands for,
Well, that old quote about if you can get somebody to believe in absurdities, you can make them commit atrocities comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as Systema has continued to evolve. I hadn't seen the manipulation behind the curtain business, but I'd seen stuff pretty close to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another side of that coin too, and I think about, because you mentioned and sort of likened Systema to Aikido, Steve. I always think about Morihei Ueshiba and the mystical element, and there's always been sort of mystical elements in fascism. I think it is like there's definitely something to the, hey, we'll see who we can get to sign on to the program, and then inculcate them with this propaganda and get them into the entity that we have defined as us. But I also think, because Ueshiba was a fascist who promoted his own mystical martial art, but there have also always been fascists that have been very serious about violent martial arts that really work, right? Which is where I think you see it in jiu-jitsu, and I think you see it in certain other, other functional martial arts that we
MMA for sure.
for absolutely that you see in active clubs. And like, I don't know what the ratio is, like, because it's interesting, as those of us that are focused on martial arts, we see Aikido and Systema as functionally different from things like Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Sambo, the clubs that have some aliveness to them, or the arts that have some aliveness to them. But I don't think we can deny that, like, there's appeal for folks that have really repellent politics, that are into the stuff that works as well.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, man.
So having established your bona fides within the martial arts space and your tangential connections to this shit there, you do a ton of work in movies and TV as
Sure.
a stuntman.
Yeah.
Now, Hollywood in its greatest sense is viewed as this liberal bastion, but I know that you think that that's not entirely accurate.
Well, I will say that Hollywood is huge. Like Hollywood, the obviously not the city, but the sort of the industry of Hollywood, right? You've got probably where that image of the liberal Hollywood comes from is like from the big stars, that have the microphones and stuff. But when you're working on a film set, like stunts, the blue collar aspects, like the stage workers, the union members, the stunt performers, they lean very right, although we hear a lot of these days, I hear people kind of shaking their head like, I can't believe that's the guy I voted for, this stuff is happening. But still, a lot of them are still drinking the Kool-Aid of like, he's got a plan, and I don't understand, like, it never made sense to me how these diehard unionists will be so supportive of the most anti-union guy we've ever had in the White House, right? I mean, for federal unions, he signed a signing statement getting rid of collective bargaining. It's like, so without collective bargaining, there's no union. There's no such thing, So, but yet and this is not just in the film industry, which the old cowboy mentality still leans very right in the stunt world and in the stagehand world. But we see it in United Auto Workers Union, other blue collar unions still haven't quite come to the, what was I doing? Yeah, you have to double down on your mistakes, I guess. So
it reminds me of the dramatically worse Reagan years, because Reagan was he was a member of SAG-AFTRA, and I think that the analog, and there's one difference that I'd love to get your take on as well. I think the analog it's the image rather than the substance, right? Because Trump, the thing Trump and Reagan have common is they were showmen that promoted this masculine image that I think a lot of blue collar workers, it resonated with them. Oh, this is a tough guy, even though I think the substance of the tough guyness is very, fallacious.
Questionable.
Not a Teddy Roosevelt tough guy, right?
No, right? Like, and this is actually a theme in the Roosevelt book that I'm writing about style versus substance, and because you can promote the image of a thing without actually being the thing, and the thing that's interesting is, and where I think the difference between Trump and Reagan is, even though policy-wise there's a lot that's similar, there's policy differences too. But I think the thing about Reagan is he promoted this vision of a shining city on a hill that was a very skilled rhetorician, was a really good speaker, and promoted an image of America as this beautiful, welcoming place that was an example to the rest of the world. And however you feel about the substance of that and the substance of Reagan's policies, Trump's vision is more like, in his phrase, American carnage. And all of this
Yeah.
stuff is fear. And even though violent crime rates we know are lower than they've been consistently falling for decades, he promotes this vision of cities as dangerous places, of your neighbors as dangerous to you, as Americans of different races as dangerous to you. And that's a thing that, while I think a lot of Reagan's children are super anti-Trump, because, however you feel about policy, there's the sort of positioning of America as a positive force in the world versus America as this shithole country, which is really how. And the last thing I'll say, it amazes me that, and I've noticed some of the same things as you, Steve, in terms of the blue collar circles that I move in, where you have folks that are pretty conservative and folks that may have that generally by and large voted for the guy, that are now, you see fewer Trump signs than you used to, you see fewer MAGA signs than you used to, because they are a bit turned off. And I think some of it is this rhetoric of, America as this negative place, and America as this, like, and it's not like he's not giving anything positive to fight for so much as these are your neighbors and they're dangerous to you.
What he's giving, the difference, like what I'm hearing you talk about, that Reagan talked about, right, how America is this great place, and Trump is positing that America, at some point in the past that we won't define, was this great place. And so let's focus on that, because right now we're completely fucked. Let's go back to that mythic time in American history that you can never really quite say what era he's talking about. But it's, are you talking about the slave days? You're talking about segregation days? You're talking about, people getting shot, Kent State? It's like what part of American history are you talking about? But the whole idea is that he's painting this picture as we're going to bring you back there. Whereas Reagan was like, we've got it now, let's keep it, So aside from policy, the other difference is Reagan, as much of a entertainer as he was still, there was still like policy rooted in all that stuff, even if you disagreed with the policy. Now it's just about Trump. This is it. This is just about
it's all style and no substance.
Exactly. There's no substance there. And that's what people like the Epstein folks, Stefan, you brought up Epstein, right? That's what they're starting to learn now. It's like, wait a minute, but wait, could it be that you're actually one of the deep state guys yourself? It's like, so, it's crazy to watch it happen. It's scary to watch it happen, because it's almost like while that's going on, he's still packing the courts with his personal lawyers, and he's still doing all these things that are going to take decades to undo.
One of the things that drives me nuts is to hear my friends describe Trump as, well, he's pro-America. Like, this dude openly hates America. He hates most of the people that live here. He hates most American people. He hates traditional American values. Hates the Constitution. We've never had a president more hostile to the Constitution. Hates our traditional allies like, well, Canada, as well as our European allies. And to your point about policy, right? These tariffs, I always tell people Trump doesn't actually believe in anything, except for that Trump should be in charge. And that the tariffs, right? If he really believed in tariffs, we would implement tariffs. Instead, they're used as this cudgel to beat people that he doesn't like. And if you look at the deal that they've agreed to in principle with Europe now, this is, by any objective standard, a worse deal for everyone than we had before Trump took office. But now people know, okay, well, I can mess up your life if I want to. And that's kind of what it's about. It's all about power. There's not a vision for policy. And look, I disagreed with the lion's share of Reagan's policies, but you're right. There was a vision. It's like, hey, we're going to do free trade. We're going to attack the unions, a number of different other things that, for whatever you thought on their merits, the man had a vision, and we just don't have that now.
I think this Epstein thing is incredibly important. Things like tariffs, things like union busting, all those things will happen slowly and over time. Your unions are going to realize one at a time, wait a second, we don't have any bargaining rights anymore. Or even better, wait a second, half of our membership can step down from our union, continue working in the same place, and we still have to represent them, but they don't need to pay union dues. That's that whole right to work legislation, brilliantly labeled right to work legislation. But those things happen sort of one at a time in a, in place of employment in Idaho, and then in a fire hall in Podunk. And same with many of the tariffs. It's going to represent itself as inflation, and it's going to creep up. It's going to be death by 1,000 cuts. It's going to be a slowly boiled frog. But the Epstein thing's kind of a line in the sand. It's pretty fucking obvious what's going on. I hate the fact that it's turned me into a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but I've always said there are conspiracy theories that are true. It's just not everything's a conspiracy theory. I think the evidence for this one, it's pretty hard to debunk the evidence for this one. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a thing that's, as opposed to a slowly creeping thing that's going to affect one person one at a time, it's something that's cutting right across all of society all at the same time in a way that really nothing else has, I don't think.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre that this has unified both sides, right? You got both sides now saying, share the files, share the files. Like, I saw some poll result where like 90% total 90% of Republicans and Democrats want that file exposed. Like, everybody kind of agrees, I personally am like, don't share the file. I would be happy to keep it secret and let those guys tear themselves apart over it, but
well, the trouble is, say the files get shared and say they don't mention the word Trump at all. That's when we go back to division, because then it'll be us going, wait a second, the metadata shows that it's been clearly altered, and the other side's going to go, nah, fuck you, I don't,
AI,
man. AI changed that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is where I think they messed up. I think that and here's the thing. It is obvious that Trump is all over the files. They had an association for decades. Epstein called him his best friend. They traveled together. He said things in public about him. He wrote him a birthday card, and whatever one thinks about him being in the files means everybody knows he's in there, right? Which is, and where I think they've messed up is, I think their window to release an altered file has passed. I think if they had released a fake file the first week of the administration, then nobody could say anything. But now, even the folks that, and this is an interesting thing about human psychology too, is like the folks that are Trump supporters are people that want a strong leader. They want this guy who's like, he's the guy, and I can trust this guy, and everybody else in power, you can't trust those guys, but this guy. And now, he campaigned on this for how long? And Pam Bondi came into office and said, the file is on my desk with the list of clients now. And we're more than 6 months in, and now they've claimed, okay, there's no file. It's like,
and there is a file, but it was written by Obama.
Right. There's both a file. It's Schrodinger's file, right? And so I've always wondered what it could do to break trust with his really loyal supporters. And I think this is it. Because if a file comes out tomorrow and it doesn't have his name in it, I think even a lot of the people I know that have been riding the Trump train all along are going to say, hey, maybe the people in power don't have my best interests at heart, even if it's a guy I voted for.
Getting people to reconsider positions is always about finding a question they don't have a cookie cutter answer to, because everybody has these their format answers. That's why I don't debate people on social media and stuff. They'll just throw out their answers. But when you find when there's a question to which they don't have one of their sort of talking point answers doesn't fit, then they really start to think about things a little bit. You know what I mean? And what's amazing is, like, usually that moment happens after lots of honest conversation with people. Like, this is just like all of a sudden, there's a question, our answer doesn't fit. What's going, and everybody's just going crazy.
The thing that, I mean, the Trump-centric view of the whole Epstein saga is interesting. But to me, I think one of the things that's maybe even more interesting is that it is really brought to bear and made very clear to all of us how, whether it's a lack of trust or a lack of, we just don't think it works well enough, but it is the Epstein files represent, I think, what most people in America, maybe in the world, consider a failure of the U.S. justice system, right? So we've got whatever, volume of documents about accused people, and we've got these horrific crimes of abuse and rape and trafficking. And so far, the only two people that have been held accountable, one is dead, which then spools out that series of conspiracies. And the other one that's alive that is now fighting with the Supreme Court to maybe get released, petitioning the Supreme Court, rather, to try to get released, and also trying to work a back deal with Trump to start running her mouth probably in a way that's beneficial to him so that she can get pardoned. And what, if nothing else, this has really done is shown how dissatisfied people are. We have these horrific crimes, and so far, most of the people that have been involved have seen zero consequences. If we were talking about anything else, and I still kind of believe this about the Epstein files, but they, according to our justice system, they shouldn't be released. Nobody in there has been,
investigated,
prosecuted. The victims in there obviously need, more than anything else, they need protecting. But we are all so fed up with the fact that there's been no accountability that we're ready to just throw all the norms out the window and say, let's see these files and let's let vigilante justice sort it out. Which is, to me, a really dangerous place for this country to be in, but also, I think, really interesting that we're unified on that front.
It's sort of an analogy to what Nate Quarry talked about when he was on our podcast, which is if illegals working in North America or in America really is your top concern, you could solve that problem tomorrow. For each illegal that you have working in your company, on your farm field, the owner goes to jail for a month or 2 months. So you have 30 people working for you, you're going to jail for 30 months. That problem be solved overnight, right? It sucks to be a Mexican farm worker, but the people who are really in charge of committing that crime are seeing zero consequences other than, hey, I don't have my pool of cheap labor to work for me anymore. But if it's a crime, then it's a crime to hire them too.
Yeah, it's the idea of attacking demand instead of supply, right?
Yeah.
The analogy you were saying, where do you see the analogy?
Well, in terms of the Epstein files, you're not seeing the prosecution of most of the people who are actually committing the crimes. The proving once again that if you're rich, you're much, much, much more immune from prosecution than if you're poor and vulnerable. Most of the people in those Epstein files are going to be rich. Most of the people with 500 farm workers working for them are going to be rich. In both cases, you're essentially protected by a failed justice system.
Yeah, I've heard jokes, starting to poke at Trump just by claiming that he's probably not in the files because he's not rich or powerful enough to appear in the files.
That might be the line of reasoning that gets him to release it. I'll see, look, I'm all over these. I've got the best files.
I'm all over. I'm in here more
Best
than anyone
ever.
else.
I want to take a little bit of a different angle on that issue, which is I don't think a lot of average Americans realize what trying to punish impoverished and oppressed people, like what it costs them. Because if we punished the people that are employing undocumented workers, I do think the problem would stop. But I don't actually think it's a problem, and I don't like that framing. And there are two things I want to get across here. The first is that there's been a pool of cheap exploited labor in this country who's not subject to workplace protections, who pays into the system and doesn't get anything back from it. And we want to throw all these people out, which, and it's interesting to me as somebody that takes kind of
Sorry, are we talking about black people or people from Latin America?
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, like both, and that's it, right? It's where racism sort of interfaces with capitalism that hurts everybody. It hurts, yes, the most vulnerable, but it hurts all of us as well. It's sort of interesting to me. A line of argument I've been taking with a lot of my friends who are anti-immigration is, well, why do you hate capitalism? And it confuses them a bit. And we talk about, like, the guy that invented capitalism, Adam Smith, believed in, yeah, free markets and also free movement of labor. Like, the idea being, if we truly believe in this invisible hand where things can set a market price, okay, how come companies can move overseas but labor can't? And I think that, now this is kind of a theoretical and abstract argument, but I think people don't really understand how much this affects their daily life, and that it's about sharing wealth, right? If you incentivize or require companies to pay people a fair wage, right? You incentivize people to, like, give their workers health care, to, like, supply that, and we shouldn't have only a private healthcare system anyway. We'll deal with that later. Like, if that happens, then the tide raises for the average folks, the folks that are working in the fields, the folks that are buying goods from those people that operate those fields, and instead the folks that are just kind of going to be okay anyway are the ones that are benefiting now in the status quo.
You know, when I hear people make these arguments, it always seems really disingenuous because we literally built our entire economy on, you know, illegal immigration. Whether that's the food we eat, the clothes we wear, you know, whatever it is. So to then
Make that case, Jesse.
well, you know, we're already seeing it. You know, we're hearing stories about crops rotting in the fields because these immigrants are even afraid to come to work, or have already been scooped up, and now that farm is empty of workers. So much of that you know, whatever we want to call it, unskilled, although most of it's very highly skilled. You know, that low level job that normal Americans don't want to work because there's no money there. We are completely reliant on that. You know, even if we just stick to our food, all of the food that we eat that isn't, and a ton of it is made here in America. Yes, we import some of it, but the fact that the vast majority of that labor, construction, that's the other big one. Do you like the house that you live in? Who do you think built that? You know, the office, the sweet, cool office building that you just moved into. Where did that come from? All of this stuff grinds to a halt if those people disappear, which is we're going to start seeing more and more evidence of that as these masked crusaders keep disappearing people out of the Home Depot parking lot.
I mean, it's such a, one would think it's such a logical, like, so take, for example, in the stunt world or in any world, safety world, where you're looking at hazards, you're doing hazard assessments, right? So you assess a hazard, and then you'll see how bad are the risks associated with this hazard, you know? And then, so let's try to mitigate these risks. You go through your whole sequence, and then at the end of it, you have to always look at residual risks. So, like, we've eliminated this hazard, but now what new hazards have we created by eliminating this hazard, right? And this is exactly what you're talking about. Like, oh yeah, so let's eliminate all these undocumented workers, but nobody's looking at, well, what will happen if they're all gone? What's the new problems we're going to have to deal with? You know, when they either they deport, which people are doing, or they are deported. You know.
I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, and it's a huge berry producing area. So there's fields and fields and fields and fields of blueberries, one of the things we're known for here, cranberries. It's God's country for producing crops. Basically it's a giant fluvial fan between two mountains, so it's tons of super fertile soil. And I have lots of friends. I know one white person who went and worked on those farms for less than a week, and they gave up because they could not go fast enough to make money. They'd work their ass off all day. At the end of the day, it was like, here's $40. So it's basically these farm fields are full of Honduran laborers and also fresh off the boat East Indian labor. So when you hear people ranting and raving about it's not as much illegal immigration, it's government assisted immigration or work programs or work residency programs and things like that, the racists are out there ranting and raving. But if we're going to be paying people $20 an hour to pick those blueberries, your shake is going to get so bloody expensive, and then that would be somehow be the government's fault too.
Well, this is part of the playbook, right? Is to defund important public structures or dismantle the supply chains that make those public structures work, and then blame the other folks when the consequences start to happen. I grew up working on farms and in fields with a lot of Guatemalans, Hondurans, Mexicans, and those are hard jobs. And so it's really strange for me to see that instead of saying, "Hey, let's create a real path to permanent residency and citizenship for these people, where it encourages people to create a sensible system that follows the rules, where folks that want to come here and work can come here and work and grow the economy for everybody, and they get subject to labor protections, and that seems to me, and respects their human rights as individuals. It strikes me as so nonsensical to instead say, like, oh, you have a bunch of people that are so willing to come here. They're willing to take less money. They're willing to get less benefits. They're willing to endure really harsh conditions with workplace protections that everybody else gets, they don't get. And we want to throw those people out of the country. It's madness.
So to pivot here, Steve, you mentioned the idea of controlling or managing the culture at your club. And we've talked on this podcast quite a bit about managing the culture within jiu-jitsu gyms. From an outsider's perspective, what does managing club culture look like? Essentially, to what are you doing to stop yourself from becoming a hotbed of Systema recruiters and spies to enable the Russian invasion of New York City?
Well, I mean, part of it is, for me at least, how I run my club, and I've been running a club since 2003, so it's a long time, and I've always tried to. I say we because I think of it as our club, but I've always tried to run an ethical club. I mean, long before any of this stuff that we're living through now. Like in 2008, we were letting people train for free during the real estate crash, and people were getting laid off all over the place. And, I never used billing companies. I've always done things old school, just between me and the students and whatnot. But then COVID came along, of course, and things started really changing. The dirty underbelly that we always knew was there was becoming more evident, and people were feeling more free to express, lots of racist things. Forget about just the anti-vax stuff. And I was forced to close, right? Like all of us. So when we reopened, I said, I was like, I'm not going to run the gym the way I used to run it, with walk-ins and just dealing with whoever comes in off the street. I said, I've been around for 20 years. I have a bit of a reputation. I can be picky. I also, it's not the only way I make a living, so I can be a little picky about who comes in the door. There's no test per se, but there's definitely a way that I curate people. And so now we only accept students 3 times a year, right? Unless it's a referral from another student. But walk-ins, cold callers, we do it with the school year. January, June, September. That's when you can come try out, right? We don't say it's a trial class, we call it a tryout. The language is really important. It's like, you can try out to be part of our school. Then people think that it's some difficult thing, like, oh my God, do I have to prepare for it, get fit? Like, no, you just have to not be an asshole, And then we are a small club, and we're just picky about who joins us. So that's the first way so basically what happens is you get some people who just move right on to the next gym. Totally fine. You get some people who really want to train with us, and they wait, right? That first step of just waiting until the next enrollment period weeds out a whole bunch a whole bunch of people. And then we end up with people who want to train at our club, right? They did genuinely want to be there because they waited. The next thing I do is just don't do monthly memberships. I just don't do any of that anymore. You either pay for a year or you can buy a pack of classes, you know? Like we don't weed people out financially. Like there's an option, a cheap option, you can just go with class packs, but it's all pay up front and train or not, or don't train, you know? But there's a level of investment there that comes with it. So now you've got people who have waited to join. You've got people who are really invested and don't want to waste their money. And of course, as a gym, people do waste their money. They join and never come, like every gym, right? But and then the other thing that's really great is because we do these enrollment periods, it's kind of like classes. Those people progress together. Those people progress, and they sort of build the solidarity with each other. And you all know, because you all teach, that when you're all progressing together, you sometimes don't see the progression because we're all moving up, right? So then the next crop of students come in and all of a sudden you see how much you've learned, you know, in the last 6 months or whatever. So this whole process serves to really curate the community, not in any kind of political or, you know, which way you're leaning, right or left or whatever. I mean, that comes from just me being who I am, and everybody knows I lean left, and everybody knows that our gym is safe. You know, we have trans people training with, I mean, you name it. We have everybody trains at our gym. We don't really give a shit. If you train hard, you're a good person, train. We don't care. But anybody who kind of is opposed to that just won't make it. They just won't make it in the gym, you know. I don't lecture people, although I'm definitely open with my opinions and stuff and things like that. But it's really just about creating that container for the community to grow and for people to feel safe in. Safe to take risks, safe to be vulnerable. I mean, I've had a lot of people come to my gym because they've heard it's a safe place to train, you know, for whatever reason they felt unsafe in another place. Maybe they have a disability, maybe, you know, like whatever, it doesn't matter. They just seem to find us. The word is out there that like that's a safe place to train. And we could do it. We keep it small. We cap all our classes at 12 people. There's never more than 12 people. Sometimes we got 3 coaches in a room, so everybody's getting very individualized attention. And so that's kind of how we do it, you know.
I'm curious about the class packs, Steve, because it's a thing that I've never done just for reasons that you talked about in terms of it's really important to curate the space. You want the folks that are there that are committed, that are learning, they're going to be productive members of the community, they're going to help others. And part of the reason I don't sell like punch cards is what I would assume you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'd rather not have the dude come in, pay for a class, and then squeeze somebody's head as hard as they can, and then I never see them again. So talk to me about class packs. How do you handle that, and like how do you get the benefit without the risk?
I never did them either. We don't do drop-ins, right? You can't just come in and take a class and pay for it and leave. I mean, you can't, like, I'll let out-of-towners, if you were visiting from somewhere else, we don't charge you at all. Just come work out, you know. Like, I don't need your $25. It's not going to break my bank. It's more valuable for me for you to go back home to wherever you came from and said, oh, I was in New York and trained with Steve and I had a great experience. He didn't even charge me anything, you know. So like that kind of stuff I don't really care about. But when it comes to like local students who buy the class pack, they buy a pack of 20 classes for $500. They have a year to use it. And when I sell it to them, I say, if you don't use 20 classes in a year, you shouldn't be training here. You know, that's just basically the way it is. And most of them go through it very quickly. And I used to think they were not important to my my economy in the gym. Like back when I was doing monthly stuff and annuals and then, you know, specials here and there, I'd be like, oh, the class packs, you know, they're not worth it. Not a lot of people are going to be interested in them, or, you know, it's too much hassle to keep track of. But when we reopened and I went to like a you pay and you train, or you pay and you don't train, but either way you just pay up front, they became very important, you know, and to the point where I'll have people blow through 20 classes on a class pack and renew it right away. They're spending more money than they would if they just did an annual, but they just, like, for whatever reason, they don't want to commit to the annual. So they just keep buying the class packs. And I'm like, cool, man. But it's not been a problem at all. But I think if I ran maybe a regular gym where people can just walk in whenever, or do it by the class, I don't like to buy the class stuff. Yeah, it works out great. It works out great for me. And the other great thing about this system is, like, if you're doing the major blips on your timeline of student enrollment, I'm really dealing with finances only 3 times a year. And then you've got these class packs that are like this infusion in between the enrollment periods that people just keep renewing their class packs. Between the January where you get the big push for New Year's, and then right in June we get the big push for the summer, and then September we get the big push for right before school starts. Those are kind of like the big months. But the class packs really work to keep some money coming in the doors in between.
Are you going to get any pushback from the Sambo community for doing things like this interview?
I don't really care, but the thing is I probably won't, because I'm just saying stuff that people know. Like, listen, I know for a fact that there were attempts to set up a system of clubs like that in this country. You know what I mean? Like, so I was approached by a quote-unquote nonprofit organization, it was a legit nonprofit. And I was offered a lot of money to help them set up 12 combat Sambo schools around the United States. And I just needed to help them navigate the athletic commissions and all this kind of stuff, and they didn't really know much about it. They were going to pay me to do it, but they were going to supply the coaches. And it just was like warning bells ringing all over the place. I knew about all the stuff going on in Europe, and I knew about the Black Fist program and stuff, and I just was like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested. I don't want to be in the Sambo regulation world anymore. I just like being a coach. I'm not part of that world anymore. And I know that other coaches had been approached too. Like, so there definitely is that, so if I haven't gotten pushback now, I'm not going to get any pushback. I'm sort of like I'm not an active member of the sort of official Sambo community now. In fact, if you look at most of us that have been around here forever, myself, Riley Bodicombe, Vlad Kulikov, all the known Sambo people, like, we don't associate with USA Sambo. Whatever. We have concerns just about how they run the organization. Forget about everything else, but it's like it says something when all the big players don't want to play with you. Like Greg Humphreys, Greg Humphreys in Bettendorf, Iowa. He was the judo and sambo coach at Militich Fighting Systems forever, back in the day. Trained all those guys. And Steve Scott, legendary, he's a judo guy, but also sambo guy. His wife was in the very first women's world championships for sambo, and she took home gold. Becky Scott, rest in peace. She died recently. All the old school folks have nothing to do with the official sambo community. So they've been pushing back at me for years. My website has been hacked. I've been accused of lying about my master of sport. I've been slandered online. I've had everything. As an American coming into that world, like when we first started the American Sambo Association, I was slandered. Somebody actually called. Back then, it was like this really lame website on the old AT&T, site. Somebody called posing to be me and had it shut down. And I remember I went to look at my email one day and everything was gone. I was like, what the hell, Yeah, I've been attacked enough. It doesn't really scare me. Like, it's the same with like MMA, when I was really fighting to help get MMA regulated in New York because we were the last state. We started the New York, the coalition to legalize MMA in New York, and we were being very active in that world long before Zuffa. Long before the UFC started getting involved. But we were painting a very different picture of what it was like here in New York that was contrary to the UFC's preferred version of MMA history, So I'm proudly banned by Dana White on social media. So,
What do you think would have happened if you had signed up with that Russian nonprofit to grow out 12 combat Sambo clubs across the U.S.? How then would that have been used? How would that have been beneficial to Russian interests in the long run? I mean, promotion of Russian culture is one thing, I suppose.
well, I couldn't say. It would just be guesswork based on what they've done in other countries. But I will say this, that I did speak to some law enforcement students and friends of mine, in that world, and they were like, listen, they weren't asking you to do anything illegal. So you would have been fine to take the money and stuff. But the thing is with all this stuff is that's how they see if you're willing to play ball with them. And then next time maybe they ask you to do something that's shady, a little in the gray, and then next time they ask you to do a little, so my feeling was I just don't want to be involved at all. And so I said thanks, but no thanks. And I hadn't heard anything since, so.
But Jeff brought up Reagan, and that's one of the things that makes my head spin. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Russians were the bad guys, and now you've got a Reagan-esque figure. There's certainly similarities there, embracing Russian totalitarianism. You've got Trump believing Vladimir Putin over his own intelligence agencies. You've got the enabling of the continued war in Ukraine, despite all the posturing and puffing. You've got more Russian money connections than you could shake a stick at. You've got Russian.
Listen, who bailed Trump out of his bankruptcies? It's like, come on, he's in their pocket.
Who did he ask to hack Hillary Clinton's email servers publicly?
Yeah.
So this switch on the Russians is just amazing. How MAGA people, that poor idiot bastard who moved from Texas to Russia for freedom because he was worried that his kids were going to be overrun with the LGBT agenda in Texas, moved to Russia and then got sent to the Russian front lines after, 2 weeks of training in Russian, which he doesn't speak. I mean, who was I to know there'd be consequences for my actions?
Listen, I've been to Russia 5 times. I have friends there. I love the people there. And generally, like whenever you train, when you travel anywhere, train anywhere else outside of your hometown or home country. I mean, obviously, in the States, you can go to another place and train and feel that camaraderie. It's wonderful. But when you go across the globe and do it, it's also wonderful. And then you realize that people are just people. I mean, the first time I went to Russia in 2007 and trained at Sambo 70, and then you just realize these are just folks that this is their. We hear BJJ lifestyle a lot, but whatever that means, I don't know. I mean, I have a purple belt that was basically
steroids. That's what it means. It's just lots and lots of steroids.
But when you go over there, contrary to over here, most practitioners are professionals. The majority of professionals, the smaller amount are recreational. Then you flip that in the United States, But I've never had randori so soft. I've never had, like people care about. It's just a great experience. It's kind of like when you hear people, they say they go train to Thailand and the guys who know how to spar light because they just fight every week and this is their living. It's the same training Sambo over there. And then the following year I went to train with a more recreational club in 2008. Went to my coach's club in St. Petersburg. And he told us straight up, Riley was there with me because we were going for the World Championships and we went early and stayed late to go train at my coach's club over there. And he said straight up, you're the first American these guys are meeting, ever. These aren't international athletes that I was training with at Sambo 70, a lot of whom spoke English and have traveled around the world and met internationals. These were like St. Petersburg military, police, and civilians just training at this club. And they had never met an American before. And, my coach, Alex, was like, you guys are ambassadors. And then what you realize is they're into the same video games we are. They do the same shit we do. They have the same fears that we do. So it was really sad to me, like, shortly after the war started in Ukraine, certain lines of communication became awkward, like emailing with people I know over there, because you just knew that they were being monitored, so then you just start being really careful about what you say, and then the conversations get really stale, and then kind of it just stops, it stops. And I don't know, the whole thing is very, very unfortunate. It feels very unfortunate to me. That was a big tangent off the original question. I forgot what it was.
Well, if a bunch of white guys on a podcast isn't about tangents, I don't know what it's about.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Steve. If people do want to train with you, how do they find you? And if they're willing to wait for your sign-up period?
If you're willing to wait, well, we're coming up soon, at the end of the summer. But it's just Sambo Steve everywhere, on every social media platform. Just look for Sambo Steve. You can find us everywhere. That's been my moniker since the underground forums, since way back. So it was given to me there. I was like, what do I call myself? This guy Bruce Kivo, I don't know, if he's a New Yorker here, and he did a lot of documentary stuff and training martial arts back in the day, and he's like, you should just call yourself Sambo Steve. So I was like, oh, that sounds good. Boop. And now it sticks. I'm on the set of John Wick, and I hear on the walkie-talkie, I need Sambo Steve on set. It's like...
Jesse, where do people find you?
You can find us online at all the socials and our website, roughhandsbjj.com. And if you're in the area, Louisville, Kentucky, come train with us. We love visitors.
And Jeff, where do I train with Bellingham BJJ?
Beautiful Bellingham, Washington, center of the known world. We're online at bellinghambjj.com. And if you're interested in jiu-jitsu history stuff, you can follow my Instagram at JeffShawBJJ.
Thank you so much, guys, and I'll talk to you all soon.
That was awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.